I'm going to be able to welcome on a man that has a 19-3 record, 10 KOs. He's currently ranked number 6 in the IBF in the junior lightweight contenders, and that he goes by the nickname Action. And that man is Jackson England. Jackson, I appreciate your time to come on today, man.
No, thank you. I really appreciate being on.
Absolutely. Well, first things first, I do want to ask you about something, Jackson. You have the nickname Action. How'd that come to be?
Oh well, I think it's the way I fight. I think it's what I bring in. I was around coaches here in Australia, and I always got the nickname Action. And when I was coming into the pro world, they ended up giving me. They said, "Oh, well, that name fits the way you fight, the
Mhm.
charismatic, the way you um, act, carry on, hold yourself. I guess it just fits."
Now, I do also want to get into your most recent fight. And that night was obviously a very successful performance for yourself, come away with the IBF Pan Pacific Super Featherweight title. After the fight, you have a very special moment. You end up proposing. Congratulations on that aspect. But I have to ask the backstory around that. How did that come to be? What was this backstory? How did you get that idea? And what was that experience like?
Um, how they came to be was, like I've shared my life, with my partner currently for about almost 2 years now, but we've
Okay.
actually met when we were about 12 or 13 years old. So I moved here from Sydney, and I ended up meeting her at a mutual friend's house party. And
Mm.
the funny thing was, is that I had this very visceral gut feeling. I was like, oh, this girl wouldn't give me the time of day. And
Mm.
then years later, going through the life, we reconnected. And then I remember saying to her on our second date, I said, oh, I'm going to marry you. Like, I will marry you. And then I was thinking of the perfect timing. When could I do it? When was the best time? And then when everything with the fight setting up, coming into play, I approached my parents, even her parents, and I said that this is what I want to do. Like the main focus
Mm.
is the fight, but this is just a second win at the end of it. And regardless, lose, win or draw, I was always going to do it in that
Okay.
stadium on that platform, because why not? There's no better time.
That's what was actually my follow-up question then. So did you have any backup plan? Was this all the way through? You said, no matter what happens that night, I'm going to propose in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even the beautiful thing about that as well is when I was prepping for the fight and when I was getting into it, like I'm not a nervous person,
Hmm.
but I think I was more nervous about making sure that went right instead of the
Yeah.
fight, because fighting to me is second nature, so it's completely fine. But I think it was afterwards, after winning and doing that, it was like, oh wait, now I've got to do this. Oh wow,
Mhm.
okay. And to be able to safely say that I can spend the rest of my life with someone who I love dearly is,
Mhm.
I'm very, very grateful for that, because she does nothing but support me through my journey.
Love it. Was this something that you always in the back of your mind kind of dreamed of? Like if you ever were thinking, if I were to possibly have a hypothetical proposal down the road, I would love to do it inside the ring, or did that just come to be more so like leading up to the fight?
What's really funny is she actually gave me the idea to start with. So about
Okay.
almost 2 years ago now, I took her to a corporate boxing event in the city, and
Mhm.
she actually said along the lines of, "This is exactly what I'd love. Imagine you fight either, I think the works of world title or something in that sort of status, or even just a big fight in general,
Mhm.
and proposing in the ring, doing it in front of friends, family, everything like that." And I was like, wow, okay, so she's pretty much mapped out something in for me, and
Right.
that was something that she thought about. So I was like, okay, if it's truly what she would like, not only would that be easy for me, I'm the one fighting, but at the same time, it's something that she would love as well. So it was a no brainer.
Now, when you were going to make the decision, you said, "Okay, I'm going to do this without a doubt. Whatever happens in that ring." Did other people know it was going to happen? Like, did family know that that was going to happen? Did she know it was going to happen, or was it an all around surprise?
No, no. So my family, her brother, her sister-in-law, her
Okay.
mum and dad, both my parents, um, my sister, my cousin, my uncle, a few different people knew that were in the mix of it. So my uncle's my management. He come over from Brisbane to come and be there in the corner with me as well. My coach
Mm.
knew. So everybody was, the people who were important who knew that, and then plus the promotion that we fought on, they knew as well.
Okay. When you did get the win, I have to imagine that made it a little bit more sweeter on top of that. So when you talk about that overall, when you talk about you got a good boxing win there and you were able to propose and that all went successfully, would you say that that's going to be a hard to beat overall night for yourself for the rest of your career?
Um, I guess maybe it depends. Like I can't really speak for the future in that sort of sense, because I look at that as a personal goal and a personal win, like
Makes
massively.
sense.
To be able to win a fight that I had all my friends, family, people that travelled over from different places just to come here to Perth and watch me fight, and then also do the proposal and do that for someone who I love the most. It was,
Right.
I think, for a personal thing that would be hard to top, but
Mhm.
I think that vision of winning a world title, doing it not only for myself but for my family, for my two beautiful sons, and then to go on to become unified, undisputed, do the stuff that I want to achieve in this sport.
Right. Well, Jackson, I want people to get to know your story a little bit more and how you've gotten to the position you're at today. And so we head back. Obviously, you talk about you're from Australia now, and you currently look out there in Perth. And so when you talk about the boxing aspect for yourself, was boxing always the dream for you? Was that always the passion, or when did the dream of boxing start to become a reality?
So boxing was always, from the people I've spoken to in the past, like it was always between boxing and dance. So
Okay.
I come from quite a music family, like whether it be musically orientated, singing, dancing, performing, and fighting. So on my father's side, that he fought professionally, his father did. Both my uncles and their father fought professionally. So boxing was always in the blood, but they've also very musically talented as well. So
Mm.
growing up, I was very privileged to have a very widespread of dance, music, singing, um, and that was really a first love. But I always seemed to drift always back to fighting, whether it be martial arts, old school fight movies,
Mm.
Jean Claude Van Damme. It could be absolutely anybody, but
Right.
it always seemed to drive me into that place of I want to fight and I want to compete and I want to become world champion. Then I got to about 13, 14, and it was my stepfather who I thank him every day for giving me this ultimatum, giving me this sort of um, version of way of saying this. And he said, like I don't want you and your sister to think that you guys are just going to live life and do a 9 to 5 and think that that's enough. Like if you guys have a passion, a goal, a hobby, something that you guys want to chase in order
Mm.
to reach your highest potential, that's what I want you guys to do. So I went. I remember going
Mm.
on a school camp and thinking to myself deeply. I was like, look, I've danced my whole life, performed my whole life, but I also I'm obsessed with the fight game. I'd be sitting there watching Sugar Ray Leonard tapes and
Mm.
Roberto Duran, all these old fighters, all these people that I idolize.
Right.
That and Michael Jackson. So it's usually Michael Jackson or it's fights. So I look at that and I come back from the school camp and I said to my stepdad, I said, I want to box, I want to fight. So I did
Mm.
that. And then from my very first session, which was a sparring session, so I basically just got chucked in there to spar. That's where I truly fell in love with it. And I really took that mark to be like, that this is where I'm going to take this journey to become world champion.
There are a lot of things that come away from obviously I'm completely different too, but a lot of characteristics that do transfer over after imagine from dance into boxing. Would you say that having that background in your life has that helped you? Obviously, specifically with the footwork, I should say the rhythm aspect. Has that helped you translate into boxing?
It's made it easier. It's made it a lot easier because I always found when it comes to my style specifically that the movement with my footwork, evasiveness, the
Right.
explosive punching, that all would say come from that rhythm from dance. And
Mm.
you either can be taught it or you naturally have it. And you got to have that mix between that happy medium of natural born ability and that work ethic as well. So I always make it my mission to make sure I work just as hard as the ability I've got, but I work double on
Mm.
top of that as well.
When you turned 13, 14, you really decided to say, got back from the school campus, say, you know what, I'm going to go all on boxing. If I would have told you, many years down the road now, you're going to become WBC Asia Silver and Gold champ, IBO Oceania Orient champ, WBO Global champ, IBF Australian and Pan Pacific champ, all these things you've accomplished. You're currently a ranked number 6 in the IBF. What would your reaction have been?
I would have been absolutely blown away and said you were crazy.
All right.
I still sit back on myself because I'm not someone who is a very good receiver. I'm not someone who takes on that knowledge and can kind of thing. Like when I'm in the ring, when I'm fighting, or when I'm dancing, or when I'm able to be in that sort of sense where it's like, what, okay, here's showtime. Here's the time to put that work in and make a show of it and do the right
Right.
thing. I can light it up then. But
Okay.
to separate that and go back on myself and then give myself praise, it's quite hard. But I
Mm.
am very grateful for the hard work I put in, and I'm very grateful for the support and the things I've achieved. Very blessed to have to have what I've got in my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Mm.
But I also, it's very hard to be kind in that sort of way because there's still so much more to achieve, and I'm grateful
Mhm.
regardless. But it'd be crazy to tell a 13-14-year old me that that was going to be the case.
I love that answer, man. So then I do have to follow up with another aspect then. Did it ever start to click for yourself? Like, is there a point when you look back and maybe even, was it maybe even at the case when you actually won one of those belts, you started realizing I'm capable of doing this? Or was there a point, later on in your career, amateur ranks, early pros, you started saying, you know what? I think I can actually be pretty darn good at this sport.
I think it was the eye opener of that. I don't shy away from the limelight in that sense. Like if
Right.
someone said you're sparring this guy or you're going to fight this person on a day's notice or 2 days' notice, I wouldn't be nervous. I wouldn't second guess it. I'd be confident. I've always been a confident person in myself and in my ability
Okay.
and in my work ethic. So I think when it comes to that aspect of winning a belt and doing that sort of stuff, I think very early on I knew to myself that okay, I've got great natural ability, I've got good work ethic, and I've got something special here. So instead of letting it slide and being coulda, woulda, shoulda,
Right.
let's chase this and let's keep evolving and getting better and improving more and more to be able to achieve this goal.
You turn pro 19 years old. Has that career, when you talk about the plans, the goals you have when you turn pro, would you say your career has gone according to plan? Has it been better? Has it been worse? How would you kind of grade your career from when your lens were at when you're 19 years old?
I think again going back to maturity and that patience thing, like the
Yeah.
things that happened early in my career that definitely taught me the a lot of things in the world of boxing. Like there's the three losses even that I take as very controversial losses, but at the same
Yeah.
time, on paper, they still say loss, and I take
Right.
more as lessons. And at the end of the day, I look at them. I can sit here and say how controversial they are and everything, but I think they build me more in order that pushed me more and worked me harder to be able to achieve things more. And
Mm-hmm.
I think even regardless of it being a loss or a win, you've got to learn regardless. If you don't learn anything, how are we meant to progress?
That's the response I always give to a lot of guys. When guys come on the show, they talk about the losses. In today's era, because of Floyd Mayweather specifically, losing that O is such a massive controversial thing. And if you think too much about it, it can be detrimental to your career. For yourself, as you said, though, you learn. Obviously, they're not the things that you want to have happen, but you learn from them. Was that
Yes.
always the reality, or was it even like, let's say, go to the first fight, Richard Lockett? Was that something that was tough for you to overcome at first? It takes some time to adjust to that, or what was your reaction? How'd you bounce back?
Well, I think from a mental thing, especially being younger then in my younger self, I
Yeah.
was very unhappy with the decision, knowing that I felt I won the fight. I
Hmm.
remember paying $100 that night. I stayed up the whole night rewatching the fight on the live stream that it was on, just so I could rewatch it and try not to be biased
Hmm.
on a scoring platform if I wasn't me and I wasn't fighting. And even regardless of that, I could say this happened, that happened. It could have been this, should have been disqualification, could have been that. But regardless, it happened. Instead of now being older and realizing that instead of holding on to those things and pointing fingers, which is quite an immature thing to do. Other than
Right.
that, just tomorrow's another day, and
Hmm.
we're going to keep chasing the same dream, keep doing the same thing, and that's the same mentality I had going into when it came to fighting Paul Fleming and Lee Wilson. That's the exact same mentality I went in there with. Like regardless, lose, win or draw, I show up as 110% of myself,
Right.
and I'm not going to make excuses or carry on. I'm just going to be the best version of me.
When you look back on it now, obviously the Richard Lockett loss, we'll get into that in a second a little bit more, but that obviously was a difficult situation for yourself. But would you say now, when you look back in hindsight, was it in a sense almost a blessing and a curse because it helped you deal with the losses to, Paul Fleming, to Liam Wilson, and then also just develop as a fighter overall?
Yeah, I think it was massive. Like even with that part that happened and the way maybe I approached the fight as well, I
Hmm.
gave a little bit too much respect for the sport itself. Like there was a lot of things that could have been that were illegal from Lockett's point, holding, headbutting, knee, like a lot of things that could have went differently in that fight if I maybe didn't have so much love and respect for the sport, which therefore taught me to not only adapt as a fighter, add more skills to my arsenal and know that I can't rely on favored or people who there is the purist in boxing that know right from wrong, but then there is also the time and time again you get people who see from a different perspective, and I'm not someone to judge. So
Right.
at the end of the day, it's on them. It's what they see. It's what they prefer, whether it be right or wrong. So I think I learned through that sort of process that I can't rely on that stuff. No matter how much I may love boxing, and the
Right.
purest of boxing, boxing will never love me back.
I like that answer as well. Let's go into that loss a little bit more because from the outside looking in, you're an upcoming rising prospect, losing that early in your career, just your fifth fight. is pretty detrimental for a lot of guys. A lot of guys, it's tough to come back from because some people look at that and say, okay, he's not ready for the step ups. Obviously, we know you proved all those statements wrong. You came back and you've had big fights and will continue to do so. But when you go back in that fight, like you said, very controversial, a lot of things happen in that fight. What would you say, if you could pick one thing, was the biggest takeaway from that fight?
I think the biggest takeaway would be that I relied too much on, again, on the sport and on the ref, and I was a little bit. I'd say it takes a lot for me to really get under my skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that fight, the fight itself was getting right under my skin, but I was relying on so many other aspects like the ref, other people to almost help me in a sense, like, hey, this is the wrong thing here. You should be helping
Right.
me out here. But it's boxing. It's a fight. So sometimes you need a box. Sometimes you need a fight. Sometimes you need a brawl. But you need to be able to have those different heads to switch around in order to be in the ring and be there. You know, like you don't. It's not about having wars all the time, but in order to survive it, sometimes you need to go through the war in order to come out
Mm.
better on the other side. So that lesson there really taught me that, okay, I can't rely too much on the officials. These people help me out here and there. I've got to be able to fight and do the right thing, and even if it means I've got to be a little bit dirty back in the stance, but in the line, in the fines of in a boxing sense,
Right.
then I will. Which
Okay.
therefore now I've used later on in my career as well, knowing that the tricks of the trade, that what you can get away with, what you can't get away with.
As I said, that is a very difficult situation to put in to begin with for yourself. Your fifth career fight, you have a loss there as an upcoming prospect. For so many guys, like I said, that can be detrimental for guys. And you talk about boxing is a messy business. To get fight scheduled, to get on promotions, so on and so forth, a loss can be bad, especially for a younger portion of your career. It's a business, and I get it. But you proved that wrong. You've gone back and you've had many other big fights. And once again, you're right back in position again. So how'd you do it? How did you get yourself rebuilt again to get back in the position you've been in?
I think, well, I thank myself for always
Mm-hmm.
being confident and always being on top of myself. Like even after the other fights and even a win or a loss, I'm in the gym 1 or 2 days later. I don't ever
Okay.
stop. So, and that's because I constantly want to perfect my craft as a fighter. So, I got to thank my coach as well for the development and all the stuff that he's done. I thank my uncle. I thank all the influences in my life that have helped me develop more and more as a fighter and go through. And even with the big fights and being on platforms I've been on, I've risen to that occasion, and
Right.
I will continue to do so as well.
Then you go up to the Paul Fleming loss. Once again, controversial. Go through that loss. What was that night like for yourself?
A lot of people ask me on that because we did get awarded as the fight of the year as well here in
Yeah,
Australia, which was, that will go down in history as one of the best. I hope as one of the best Australian
definitely.
wars that has ever happened. And at that time, I was asking to fight Paul Fleming for 2 years, and we never got it. And that was because of management and whatever it may have been. And then they called me on 5 weeks' notice to take the fight. I was
Hmm.
already fit. I was already ready. So I said, "Yep." And the only way I can explain that sort of fight is probably physically. It was probably the hardest fight I've had thus far,
Okay.
and it was because we went to war for 10 rounds. We did not stop, and you'd probably look at the punch count; it was through the roof.
Yeah.
And I look at that fight and I look at those things like that was my breakout fight from fighting in Perth and being able to go. The fight was in Sydney, so I was able to fight in front of Sydney family for the second time in a big stadium, and I was blessed for that opportunity. And still to this day, like regardless of the outcome, I look at that and I was able to, showcase to not only Australia but to parts of the international world that I. I come here to fight, and I am world class, and I can bring this. And yeah, to Fleming's record and to his detriment and what he had around on his back end, being an Olympian, fighting in America, doing all the stuff that he did, no
Right.
one really thought much that I was going to achieve or that I was going to even have a chance with Fleming,
Mm.
and prove those people wrong again. It was satisfying to me because I proved that I belong there.
You said that perfectly. I think when you talk about the sport of boxing, there are situations where even if you take that loss on your record, you can still gain it in a sense when you look back in hindsight, win. And what I mean by that is you can obviously win in terms of the fan bases. People have more support of you. You've grown your name. And we see that just most recently, people can think back on, Ramon Cardenas, obviously still lost in a way, but still he became a massive name. He's going to get more big fights in the future. You have a very similar story. You had a big fight. obviously ended up losing there, but so many people now recognize your name. You grew still in a sense. And then we see obviously the opposite in some situations, like William Skull against Canelo recently in those type of situations.
Yep.
But what I want to ask you then about that is, you look at yourself. Why is it so important that if you're going to go get an opportunity to have a big fight, whether that be a world title fight, a big fight like this, whatever it is, why is it so important to make sure you leave a note and make a positive imprint on people as opposed to just going out there just to get the rounds in?
I think it's very important as a fighter, part of development, part of like, adjusting.
Yeah.
Like, because at the end of the day, we're not there to, just get rounds. Like there is a thing with, being active and getting out there and doing it. But if you don't truly believe in yourself, why take the risk?
Yeah.
And a lot of guys, who have that mentality of, oh, I'll go there and I'll just give it my best. And it's like, you got to really, truly believe in yourself in this sport, because if no one else believes in you, who else is? And
Yep.
I do understand like people, with activity getting rounds, like there's like even myself, like there's the fights where I've had just maintain activity, get the rounds, do that sort of stuff. But I don't take those fights lightly. I don't take any fight lightly. You don't take any lightly. So
Mm-hmm.
I look at that, and even if a big opportunity and big thing comes my way, I'm going to be grateful for it. But that's my chance to shine. That's my chance to
Mm-hmm.
be out there and to go on to bigger, better things, and to be able to achieve my goals and what I want to achieve in that world. So no, it's not just for rounds for me. It's really get out there and do everything I humanly possibly can to win and to achieve what I want to.
I know it's been a very kind of controversial to say topic. Obviously, Turkey Al Sheikh came out and he said the Tom and Jerry tweet and talked about all the different aspects in that regard. When you look at that, you are a man that's literally gone to war in the ring. You've put on great fights. You said one of the greatest fights in Australian history. All those things. We know you're going to bring it when you step in that ring. Is there a problem, do you believe, when you look at some of the other fighters out there? As I said, obviously William Skull is one of the biggest ones, but are there a problem where some guys are not doing it the right way? And what's your take on that overall?
I do agree with Turkey on that sort of remark on the guys that do that, but then you got guys who like the likes of Shakur.
Yeah.
William Skull made it obviously very apparent that he wasn't going to engage with Canelo, but at the same time, it's very easy to say, yeah, I'm not going to engage with Canelo, but then be in the ring, it's like, wow, I really don't engage with Canelo, and I could never experience that. I've never experienced that, but I guess if I stepped in the ring with Canelo, even for whatever reason, I think I would almost do the same thing. I'd probably jump around the ropes and stay on the other side, but then the fighter and me would probably just stand toe to toe and try and have a crack as well. So
Right.
I don't blame William Skull for running away, because he definitely didn't look like he wanted to be there. But at the same time, you look at the guys who like Shakur, like even Devin Haney, the guys that who want to use their feet, want to use their range, don't want to be
Hmm.
inside. It's very different when you're boxing on the outside, you're moving to change
Thank you.
angle or moving
Yes.
to reset and then throwing punches off. William Skull's issue in that point is that he just didn't stop moving. He didn't even put punches out there until he felt he had to, but it was sporadic. Where Canelo ended up just
Yes.
like plodding around the ring, following him everywhere. It wasn't even chasing. He wasn't even stalking. He was basically just walking. So that's where I think Turkey's right on that aspect. But then you
Right.
can't get away from the people who like Shakur, like these pure boxers who love to move, love to use their range, and they do make it exciting. But people like Shakur and people like these people, if they box so well, they don't have to make it a fight harder than what it has to be,
Hmm.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think I love what you said there because I feel like that is a massive thing. I've made this statement so many times that there is a big difference between what William Skull did and some other guys, as opposed to someone that's just very defensively sound, someone that has great
Yes.
technique, something like that. And I think Shakur. Now, obviously, I think if we look at the Times Square one, I think that performance was a little bit off for Devin Haney. You could consider that one a little bit running because he obviously didn't engage too much, but also his opponent didn't do so either in that fight.
Yeah.
But you still have to look at the aspect of like, okay, a lot of these guys are still using technique. When you look at that, do you feel like there also is a take from the fans? Like, do you feel like fans are kind of combining them too much? I feel like Shakur, especially in America, gets a lot of criticism because he does not engage per se like a Tank Davis. Is there an issue where fans don't understand that as well as they probably should?
Yeah. I think the boxing knowledge of the public nowadays, they're not purist, and then they
Yeah,
don't fully understand what a fighter is, a boxer. They don't know how to differ the two.
agree.
And you got people like, to this day, I still personally believe of this era, Vasyl Lomachenko is probably one of the best technically sound fighters to ever live, almost.
Yeah,
And I look at the way he would utilize his feet, move, and be so explosive, and where he wanted to be explosive, move where he wanted to be, dictating in that sort of sense. So you can't give Vasyl Lomachenko any doubts, because he's boxing and moving and doing everything a boxer should, but
right.
he's also that smart and that intelligent. He's utilizing range, mid range, inside, outside. He's doing everything. So people won't hound Lomachenko for that. But then you got someone like Shakur or someone like Haney, who, again, people who may move a little bit and don't sit still
Hmm.
because they don't see what maybe the game plan is going in there, maybe what they're trying to utilize or what trying to set up.
I like it.
They go straight to, oh well, he's just running. Where
Hmm.
trust me, I'm not a runner. I'm not
Yeah.
someone who does that. But I
Nope.
will move, and I change my angles and I move off. So I try and mimic, if not put stylistically the same as Lomachenko. But if I
Hmm.
do need to utilize movement and go for a walk or go for a move to reset, there's nothing wrong with that. But if
Right.
you are constantly tracking, then you definitely have to engage. Otherwise, people are just going to have nothing to say.
Perfectly said. Now, I want to ask you, as we go back to obviously Paul Fleming fight, when you get put into a situation where obviously I'm sure the game plan, now maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, was not to go to war to the extent which you did in that fight. But when you get put in the situation, you know, okay, it's going to be one of those nights. I have to go to war tonight. It's going to be one of those type of nights. What shifts in your mind? What goes through the mind of a boxer when you are put into that position, that situation?
I get started. So I think from the very first or second round, he comes. I think it was the first round. He came straight at me.
Hmm.
I think Paul came to obviously take it up, put it on me, and see if I can be there with him. And I boxed. I did my part. We were back and forth. It was the way it was. And then the second round, when I dropped him with that right hand, I felt okay. Other than chasing, I'll put shots together, but I don't want to jump on too much because I don't want to run into something. But then at the same time, I don't want to, make fault because I may have put him down, I may have hurt him for that second or that couple of seconds, but I don't want to go. I don't want to be greedy.
Right.
And then realizing that okay, we're both going to town here. It just built the excitement more. So in my head, I think if I can go back and I can remember that, it was that sheer excitement and pure adrenaline of wow, we're really going at it here, and who's going to be the better man? Who's going to be the one who's got more grit? Who's got more heart here?
Right.
And that excites me because that really separates the men from the boys, if you know what I
Yep. When you are, getting into round 7, 8, 9, earlier, I believe you said that was probably the hardest fight you fought in your career to this point. So that means obviously you
mean.
were going through a lot more in that fight than any other fight you've gone through. Where are you from a mental standpoint when you are in those deep rounds, deep into the fight? You don't know who's winning at this point in time. It's neck and neck, brutal war. What is going through your mind? You just kind of kick into another gear that you've never been in before. What's going through that mind?
Definitely I never doubt my fitness. I never doubt my ability or my confidence in myself and what I can put out
Okay.
because of the hard work that me and my coach do and the hard work the torment I put myself through.
All right.
But at the same time, I think looking in those later rounds, knowing that okay, having a look over the shoulder, seeing how they're breathing, doing all that sort of stuff, that goes out the window by that time
Okay.
because even if you can have knowledge enough to be able to look in that sort of sense, you're more focused on okay, I've got to be on my game here because we're later in the fight, we're so heightened and our nervous systems are through the roof. So who's going to be the tougher, the stronger? Who's getting it out there? And there was no step back with either of us. It was
Mhm.
just go, go, go.
Next fight I want to get into, Liam Wilson. Obviously, it is lost in that fight situation again, but that obviously was another good fight overall for yourself. What was that night like?
That night, like again, I with that fight personally, I felt I did more than enough to win, even though I did cop two headbutts in the fight, and even with that Fleming fight, I copped a headbutt as well. So
Mhm.
to this day, touch wood, I've only ever been cut open from headbutts in a fight. I've never
Mhm.
been cut open by a punch. But in saying that, I felt very technically on top with that fight with Wilson. It wasn't until later on in the fight with the headbutts where we went a little bit more in the trenches with each other.
Mhm.
But I felt like I was just boxing. I just felt like I was boxing the right fight. I was out boxing him. I was out pointing him. I was doing all the right things. And then once it got to later on in the fight, where I think a few of the started getting a little bit messy at times, and then the headbutts came out. It was like okay. Well, he's going to try and jump on me, so I better go and do the same thing because this doesn't
Yeah.
look bad from a viewpoint or from anything. And even though they were headbutts, it still doesn't look great. So
Right.
I've got to rise and I've got to bring myself above that and I've got to still fight on and I've got to bring the fight to him.
All right. Well, I have to ask you this now. You obviously do have that loss on paper to Liam Wilson, but you guys are now in a position where in the IBF, he's just got announced he's going to get the title eliminator against Sultan Zaryubek in the near future now. But you guys could hypothetically be in line to go fight each other in a rematch. Is that a rematch you'd want to make happen?
Oh well, that's like any of the rematches. I haven't said no to any of them.
Okay.
I think even talks months and months ago about possibly. I think the talks were trying to do a rematch with Wilson. Even after the Fleming fight, they were saying Wilson trying to get a rematch with him. And yeah, it just ended up didn't come into fruition. But
Okay.
if that came up, like I'm not going to shy away from no man. Personally, I would love that shot with Zoltan. From all the talks and all the stuff that's been going on, I think we've put an order in for the IBF for us to get that shot against him for the IBF eliminator.
Okay.
And then yesterday I saw something come up with Wilson possibly getting that shot. So boxing politics or whatever is going on behind closed doors or anything like that, I just trust my uncle, my manager, and I just fight. And whoever's in front of me, I go there to win. That's my job.
All right. If you could hypothetically pick between Richard Lockett, Paul Fleming, Liam Wilson, what rematch would mean the most to you if you could go avenge the loss?
All three of them in the ring at the same time. No, I'm joking. I think I think the Wilson fight would probably be the one I would have loved to go back because I was very certain on that fight. Where the thing with Lockett and Paul Fleming that they were very back and forth fights, where Lockett on the other sense was more being dirty in a way, where Paul Fleming it was a war, so
Yeah.
it could have went either way.
Right.
And then with Wilson, I felt I was just on top boxing, and I felt personally I did more than enough to win, regardless of the headbutts and the blood being in my eyes and everything like that. I felt I did more than enough. So I think if there was an opportunity to, if there was in the future to do it again,
Mhm.
I feel I could do even better than the first one.
Like I said, with you guys both being the IBF, if you whichever one gets obviously a shot, that'd put number one, that'd be title eliminated. Then you guys would go fight Sugar Nunez. But hypothetically speaking, you guys are ranked neck and neck with each other. You guys are right in the same position necessarily within one or two spots of each other. Is that a fight with it also being possibly domestic wise as well? Could we see that fight happen realistically? I mean, on paper, it seems like it, but you obviously have the context. You know what's going on. Could we see that fight happen the next, let's call it year and a half?
Who knows?
All right.
I'm definitely not shying away from nothing. Like, I don't shy away from anybody.
All right.
But again, like I said, I just trust my management, my uncle, in what direction he takes us, and that's the route we're going with the IBF. From what I heard, I thought Wilson was going the WBO route because I know that he's trying to chase the rematch with Navarrete, which is
Right.
personally, yeah, he did more than enough in winning that fight with Navarrete, obviously with the count and with all that sort of drama that happened there. But
Hmm.
yeah, he deserves a shot with Navarrete, even another shot with Valdez if Valdez was to be in that position again as well.
Right.
But again, in saying that, I would love the shot to fight Valdez, Navarrete, Sugar Nunez, Ashaki Foster, Lamont Roach, if
Right.
he was to still have the WBA title. I'd love to fight any of those guys because I believe I've got more than enough, and I believe I personally am on that world level with them.
All right. Let me go a little bit deeper into that aspect you just talked about there. Obviously, we know that 130 has a lot of possible changes right now. When you talk about Lamont Roach, I'm pretty sure it's going to be moving up to 135. It seems all but certain that aspect is going to
Mm,
happen. But when you look at other things, Emmanuel Navarrete is going to be forced to fight Charlie Swartz in a rematch. Then you have
yep.
Sugar Nunez. I feel like that obviously is the most realistic option right now on the table. Because I know obviously Oshaki also has his fight lined up already with Stephen Fulton soon. So you have
Yeah.
a lot of those things there. But when you look at that, you talk about the fact that you were putting in the bid for that opportunity there. Where does that stand? So I guess I should be asking this to put about better wording. That announcement came out that Sultan also be finding Liam Wilson. Is that confirmed yet? Is that 100% guaranteed, or is this still possibly up in the air where you could get that shot?
I personally don't know. From
Okay.
what I know, I think we've put the the form in for us to fight Zoltan. But
Okay.
again, that's where that media come out yesterday of saying Wilson to fight him. So again, I just whatever I'm told and whatever I know what's going on, that's what I think. But yeah, I'm not. I'd absolutely love to fight Zoltan for that number one spot because to go on and fight someone like Sugar Nunez, who's an absolutely amazing Mexican fighter,
Yeah.
and I watched him in his fight with Rikishi as well, and that was an awesome fight.
Yeah.
Like to be able to share the ring with someone like him and to be able to, you know, win that fight and become the IBF world champion, that'd be a dream come true for me.
Do you have a preference, and if so, which one of the champions would you most want to fight?
Uh, say Nunez is the number one because
Yeah.
being that rating of the IBF and stuff, he's definitely number one.
Makes
But I
sense.
want to take the biggest and the best. I don't
All
want
right.
to shy away and think about someone who's maybe easier target or someone who maybe is, falling off the rails a little bit. I want to take on who is the number one at the time
All right.
and who they think like even but looking at that up. when Kakashi had not only the IBO but the IBF as well. Like that was the person I was gunning for as well, because not only unified champion, he also had both belts. So
Yeah.
I looked at someone like him and I was like, okay, he's someone I'd target to fight, not only because he's unified, but because to me, being unified in that division, he was the number one.
All right. Well, before we go into more future plans, I do want to get into one other thing that's happened in your career. Jamel Hearing, great performance there. WBO Global Super Featherweight Championship is what you get in that fight. What was that night like for yourself?
Well, going back, I actually remember talking to my coach about when I think it was at the time when Jamel was the WBO champion before he fought Shakur and he beat Carl Frampton.
Right.
And I remember my coach sending me the footage, or like the highlights of that fight. And I remember saying to him in person, I said, like, because at that time Jamel was the number one in the division. He was the one that people weren't really going around with and stuff.
Right.
So I look at that and I'm like, wow. I remember saying to him, I'd love to share the ring with him. I'd love to fight for the WBO super featherweight world title against the likes of him. And weird when saying that. Obviously, went on to fight Wilson, did all the other stuff and all that, and then out of the blue, my uncle told me, he goes, "Oh, look, there's a possible fight for Jamel Herring to come to Adelaide and for you guys to fight at 26's arena." And I said, yes. I just said yes before anything. I just said absolutely. And not only because I back my skills, I back my ability, I back myself,
Mhm.
but to share the ring with the likes of one of the best world featherweight world champions at the time, 2-3 years prior, I couldn't shy away from that. And that also is because I want the best for myself. Like in order to be the best, you have to go up against the best.
Yep.
So that was my shot.
I love it. All right, so let's go into the future goals now. You're 27 years old. You're currently ranked number 6 for top on the IBF. What's next for you? What do you have plans? What you go? I know we kind of talk about obviously putting your bid in for the number 1 spot, but what do you see yourself doing over the duration of this next calendar year, or the next year, I should say, I guess? What do you have plans? What do you want to accomplish?
Um, Personally, I'd love to, be in that number one position to be able to fight, Zolbeck if we get the bid and get that over the line, or if we get a call up to fight Foster after he fights Bolton, we're not
Right.
going to go away from either one. So personally, I think for months if we get the Zolbeck fight, that'd be better because then that moves to number one. Go on to fight someone like Schumaker.
Right. I also want to ask you this aspect because it seems like it's obviously a little bit tricky position when you're trying to go for the number 1 spot. Obviously, putting the bid in, you have Liam Wilson trying to get the bid, so on and so forth. Is your game plan right now? Do whatever you can do to get that number 1 plan, or if that is not on the table for yourself, are you okay pivoting and doing another fight before the opportunity arises?
Yeah, well, activity is one of the most important things. So, like
Yeah.
in the first place, we were looking to get an activity fight and just be out there and active in July, but unfortunately, we couldn't find an opponent. We couldn't get anybody over the line. So, I'll be there anyways, supporting both David Nika and Alex Leopold Jr. On
Okay.
their fights on July 16, which is on the Sonny Bill and Paul Gallen on the card.
Right.
I'll be there supporting them, but we were hoping to be fighting on the night, but unfortunately, we're not. So
Okay.
now yeah, I guess if we can get a fight anytime for activity, then that'd be great. But if not, and we can get that over the line and fight for and do the eliminator, then I'll be over the moon.
All right. So if I were to ask you in the grander scheme of things, we're going to talk about 1 year to 1.5 years. So that would put us right about heading into 2027. Where do you see yourself at that point in time?
Either already being world champion or at least getting my shot.
Okay.
Because fighting as much as I have, I look at the people who here in Australia who have had their opportunities at a world title and done that stuff. Like I feel, I feel mine's very overdue. I'd love to be in there to be able to mix it with the world's best. And I believe I've got everything it takes to be able to take that out and become world champion.
All right. Now, you are 27 years old. You have fought at 130 throughout your career now. Do you see yourself ever moving up? Is 130 your weight class that you want to go win a world championship at and stay at forever? Or do you see yourself ever moving up?
Yeah, I do. I think personal goal would be, I'd love to unify, or even if I can be undisputed at 130, that'd be amazing because
Right.
I don't know when the last person other than Kakashi was unified. So if I can unify or at least win three of the world titles at Super Feather, then that'd be amazing. And then move up to lightweight. I make Super Feather very easy. I make 130 very easy. I walk around just above lightweight, so it's not a big weight cut or anything. I've never had a hard weight cut.
Okay.
So I think naturally moving up as I get a bit older, I think that would be the case as well. I'd love to not only win world titles at 130, but also 135. And if it means moving up to 140 later on in life, then yeah.
All right. So would you say it's more so than just based upon an accolade standpoint where if you accomplish all your goals at 130, then you'd move up, but if you don't accomplish those things, you probably stay at 130 then?
Uh, Necessarily no. It all depends
Okay.
on the body and how you feel as well. So even if it was, say, like Lamont Roach's opportunity, he was already world champion at 130, and then getting the shot to move up to lightweight to fight Tank
Good point.
and go for the lightweight world title. Like if there was a case where there was an opportunity at lightweight and they offered it to us, we wouldn't say no either.
Right. All right. So then I also want to throw this other kind of pitch to you right now. There is a big fight going to be happening early August between Raymond Ford and Gakassi. Obviously, neither one of them have actual world championships. I know he has obviously his IBO, but when you talk about obviously the main four belts, if that winner comes out and does not have a world title shot, would you entertain that fight?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I would shy away from fighting Cassie or Raymond Ford, and they're both really good fighters. Really, really
Yep.
good fighters. I think they've got great attributes. I think they've got great skills. So to be able to mix it with either one of them who win, I wouldn't say no at all.
All right. A couple questions before I let you go, Jackson. One of which is that we talked about earlier. You're from Australia, and when you talk about that, the boxing overall world out there, and the growth of, I should say, has been exponential. It's been incredible out there overall. When you talk about being able to represent Australia now on the world scene, what does that mean to you?
Means everything, like because I believe Australia's got some of the best fighters that are out there. You look at
Yeah.
all the accomplishments that George Kambosos did. You look at all the fighters back in the day, from Lionel Rose to Lester Ellis to Barry Michael,
Hmm.
all the big names: Danny Green, Anthony Mundine, Tony Mundine,
Yep.
and then you go up to who's current at the moment. You look at Joe Appetiter, who's an Australian Samoan, who's
Hmm.
and I proudly represent the Samoan culture as well. Every time I fight, I walk out with my red Ulafala, and being able to have that Samoan culture behind me as well, not only from
Yeah.
them but also the Ukrainian side with my family and that. Like to be able to represent all that here just from Australia and be
Right.
able to bring that into the world is a really big privilege.
You are 27 years old, so you're not necessarily a prospect or anything like that anymore. But when you do talk about the young guys, guys that are still considered prospects up and coming in Australia, if you could list, let's say three guys actually, that you see would be possible to be the next future stars of Australian boxing, 5, 10 years down the road, who are those guys?
Ooh, um, there's definitely a lot of names. There's a lot of names here in Australian boxing. There's a couple of boys over in Melbourne. I can't um, unfortunately remember who did the names like there. Um, Definitely Jai, who I last fought. If he gets more activity, he'll definitely have do a big name and accomplish a lot of things here in Australian boxing. I personally believe.
Yeah.
Um, there's a bunch of names. Unfortunately, sorry, I'm a little bit of a mind blank there.
All good.
I probably should do a little bit more looking into the Australian boxing. I'm chasing all the big stuff now, so
Right, right.
um, oh, there's a few names actually. Oh, there's a few boys here in Perth. There's my friend Alex Winwood, who
Yeah,
went on to fight for the WBA world title here in Perth, the minimum weight title. He's a phenomenal boxer, so he's something that's going to be big here in Australian boxing as well. He's already had a chance for a world title.
mhm,
Unfortunately, he didn't get the win, but again, he's one of them. And then definitely, um, if I was to personally say, I'd say someone that's going to be really fun to watch would be Alex Leopold Jr. because his dad was um, the contender he fought for Vladimir Klitschko for the undisputed heavyweight world title.
right.
Alex Leopold Jr. He's going to be a very big force to be reckoned with. He's like another coming of George Foreman.
All right. I like it, man.
Yeah, he's
W-
a beast. Yeah, and then to go on another person as well, he's actually turning pro in August. A big shout out to my cousin Cassidy Thornbury. So he's having his first pro fight, and he's got a style that you've never seen before. It's so unorthodox. It's almost laughable, but he's a hell of a boxer. He's a hell of a boxer. So he turns pro in August, and I can't wait for him. And then even for the younger brother Rube, they're going to be forces to be reckoned with as the years go on.
I love it. All right, well, Jackson, I have one final question for you. It's the question like wrapping up every interview with is talking about your legacy. One day you'll move on from boxing. When that day does happen, what do you want to be remembered for what you have accomplished both inside and outside of that ring?
That not only my boxing ability and my skill set and what the excitement I bring, um, but also the respect. The respect I have for other fighters, for everyone around me. Like like I'm not much for the circus. I'm not much for the big trash talking and the
Yeah.
carrying on. But if you don't love what you do and you don't know how to have a laugh, then why do you do it? So like I love everything I do, but you also got to be wholesome and respectful and have respect for others as well, because it's not easy for people to jump in the ring and fight. Anyone can carry on about it and say that and maybe have a bit of a go, but in order to get in the ring where it's just you and another man, and whoever wins has to win, and it's very modern day gladiator, as you would say. So
Right.
that aspect there, I want people to remember that no matter what fight, where it is, where you are, nothing but love and respect for everybody.
I love that. Jackson, I appreciate you for taking time to come on. I cannot wait to see what God's got next for you, man. And best of luck in what God's got in store for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course, you're always welcome on, man. God bless.
Thank you.